Hey, welcome everyone.
Hello.
So glad to be here.
Nice.
Good to hear. All right, so we've all heard of low code and no code. It's a development environment that is used to create software through a graphical user interface, so with as little code as possible. On the other hand, we also have NLP, natural language processing, these days. NLP is a subfield of AI that aims to let computers understand natural spoken or written language. But is NLP the next step in usability? That's exactly what we are going to discuss here today. With me are Rob Tiffany, founder and managing director at Digital Insights, Dejan Dimic, engineering manager at Glovo, Casey Bison, head of product at Blue Bracket, and Veselin Pizurica, founder and CTO at Waylay.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Dejan, you have to get used to French pronunciation of your name. I don't know, but
No.
All right. But you know what is interesting? We had a first event, Unicorn Summer, mid of last year. We talk about low code and no code. I think that is going to be probably 2.0 of that conversation. And like you said, Sandra, we're looking forward to this conversation because I believe, if not mistaken, we kind of ended up that conversation in understanding where the low code, no code movement is going. And one of the things that you were saying, okay, is the NLP that thing? So indeed, so I will let you, Sandra, go from here and shoot your questions.
Exactly.
And we can go from there. Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to mention that if anyone watching wants to take part and has any thoughts or questions, you can use the chat on the side as well. Am I pointing in the right direction, by the way? You never know with webcams. Yeah, maybe. So put them in the chat and we'll try to get to them as well nearing the end of the session. But first, maybe let's take a round and let everyone introduce themselves. Dejan, maybe we can start with you.
Okay, so yes, I'm currently engineering manager in Glovo, but my kind of low-code NLP knowledge came from other companies that I was working before, like Amazon Alexa, for instance, which both of these combine, but also as a vendor for mobile operators and among few who actually develop some chatbots that are partially in this kind of combination of NLP and low-code kind of solutions. So that's why I am kind of enjoying with this great audience and great company to discuss these topics.
Okay, great. Let's pass the ball to Casey.
Great. So happy to be here. My background is in cloud infrastructure, engineering, and security. But my passion really is in how we can combine and give tools to the business side to achieve these goals. And that's what so excites me about no code and low code. And as we start looking at NLP, I see really the next generation of the web and the interface to how people get information in the future. So that very much excites me, and I'm really looking forward to what the teams here can build over the ensuing days.
Cool. Yeah, me too, to be honest. Okay, let's go to Rob.
Hey, really excited to be here. This is great stuff. My background doing IoT since the dinosaurs roamed the earth, and it was scary times. But yeah, I really focus on years. Spent most of my career at Microsoft and built Azure IoT, and that was a lot of fun. Built Lumada and Hitachi, so living in Japanese factories. But yeah, it's all exciting stuff. And when I think of low code, it takes me back to the 90s when all these people started building apps using Access.
Been there and done that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Crazy, yeah. Rob, I noticed that you're having a little bit of trouble.
Things keep flipping out.
Yeah.
Internet of Things.
Yeah. Always happens. All right, maybe let's go to Veselin.
Yeah, my pleasure to be here. And I mean, I never had a chance to meet you, Rob, in person, but enjoy your podcast. I see you have no coffee with you, so probably somewhere hidden, but uh, so, but again, I'm really happy to be here. I mean, on my side, I'm a CTO co-founder. I'm a control freak, meaning that I really like control theory and automation. That was always part of my gene to, as an engineer, to make automation really works. It's always like a model-driven thing, so it's really something that every engineer wants to fix once forever, and never stuff gets done. And again, it's been a journey as a developer, as a CTO to found this company. So I'm really enjoying. I do this as a hobby, not as a job, so to speak. So I'm really, that's the reason why I co-founded the company, to have excuse to be with you guys and chat about cool stuff.
That's a good excuse, I think.
Yeah, very good excuse.
For sure.
All right, Sandra, back to you.
Thanks, Veselin. So we know our guests, we know the topic. Let's just dive right into it with one of the bigger questions I had for you. And that is, do you think that NLP is the next step up in usability from low code?
If we use the same kind of round, let me start.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I don't think NLP is the next thing. I think it's the current thing. It's not something that we haven't seen in action already. I like how low code democratize the IT in general. And I think that will be even faster when this kind of addition of NLP get introduced. I have some friends that are more engaged in different aspects of IoT support. They are more text and voice oriented. And I think that, for instance, legal documents and similar stuff that also needs to be exchanged, especially in the multinational trading, is a part where NLP play a bigger and bigger role. And automating these kind of processes will be a huge movement as well. These are not like geeks like all of us here on this meeting, but need still to satisfy their business goals. And we are the ones that will provide these enablers for them. So NLP is already here. Alexa is built on it, just FYI. But in general, I think it's a part of combined efforts to make us more productive.
I think that's a really great. I mean, I'll transition from there. The way I see NLP is this expansion of that, the relationships that we've built across the web and the internet in terms of making things possible, but it's within a really narrow range of inputs. And as we add NLP and build tools to resolve the uncertainties of NLP, we really expand that space. And as Dejan, and forgive me on pronunciation, pointed out, like the need to process contracts, the need to understand these business documents and make sense of those and get meaningful results is really, really interesting. And building tools around that to manage those things and create value out of those is really, really exciting to me. Now, one of the things that I would highlight about that is increasingly, what was so powerful about the web was how open it was. And a question I would ask, and what I'm excited about as I see this, is can we create an environment where every business has that opportunity to build these tools, or is it going to be narrowed and limited to the large clouds that would own those things? And so that's doubly exciting as we look at this and the tools and the capabilities that Waylay gives developers of all sizes and the opportunities that unfold from there.
Yeah, power to the people, right?
Exactly.
Those silos, absolutely. I'm going to apologize in advance. I keep getting kicked out of the metaverse, and then I come back in, so I'm still alive. It's okay. When I think of NLP, I think back to Dragon Naturally Speaking on Windows a million years ago, and it was just rudimentary, words and phrases to send commands. So like you're creating a document in Microsoft Word or something like that, and then how that speech recognition stuff has evolved over the years. And you're right, a lot of people talk about Alexa. When I was at Hitachi, we're building Lumada. So I don't know, 2016, we didn't ship it, but we did a lot of experimentation with prototypes where we were, using some of the skills with Echo in order to just do simple commands to tell the system, I want you to do this, this or that. Obviously, nowhere near what you guys are working on today with the technology that's out there now that we just didn't have before. So I think it's exciting. I think, in the end, this is about having empathy for the customer. Customers are not computer programmers. They're not geeks like us, and they just have a job. They don't care about the technology. They don't care about me getting kicked out of the metaverse again here. And so they just have a job to do. There are jobs to be done in a company to whatever the task is, and you just got to make it simple for the customers. And a lot of times, I've been guilty of losing sight of that. And so it's this is critical stuff. And I think when you're all about the customer, success is right behind you.
Exactly. Cool. Rob, I see Casey commented in the chat saying that if you have 2 tabs open of Goldcast, maybe that could be giving problems.
I'll take a look.
Awesome. Right, Faisal,
I
see you're eager to...
I only have like 100 tabs open. Is that a problem? What?
Shouldn't be, right?
Yeah. All right.
Right, Faisal, I saw you're eager as well to answer the same question. Is NLP the next step up from low code, or just the next step in general?
Well, first of all, I mean, when we talked last time about low code and no code, it is the storytelling there was that we want to lower the bar so that technology becomes, as Rob said, power to the people, so it becomes more approachable. And I think Alexa was the first thing where people really saw these things, I don't say really working, but it really lowered the bar of people adoption, understanding how far this technology can go. Now, you see already as a coder, if you like, that you can use now NLP and GPT-3 and GitHub and actually say, show me the Fibonacci thing, and you get a Fibonacci thing. So obviously, that doesn't mean anything for the end user, but it's kind of cool for the coders to see, okay, that we can get the help from some sort of a magic that lowers bar of learning coding by examples. But obviously, the next thing is whether we can lower the bar in a sense that we can actually say rather more complicated things, coming back to the analogy with Alexa, like if that is happened and this happens, how about this that needs to happen? And in that respect, you start talking about control and automation. So, and you're right that NLP already is there, has been there in the voice recognition, and there is already quite some applications related to the data mining. What is interesting in this context is that we're actually bringing that back into the kind of automation story, which brings us back to Alexa, if you like, is that is there possible to basically create a lower bar of the automation through the NLP, and then the input can be a voice, but can as well be text in any language. So this is pretty cool.
Vasily, I have to jump straight in. Sorry not to wait for the next kind of question. We as a geeks, we are mostly attached to some kind of IoT things because it's close to our hearts. But if you think about, there are a lot of things that people don't have a possibility to have their hands engaged with the keyboards and still want to be productive. This is where we want to shine.
Correct.
Yeah, that's so true. I also think about, and I apologize for being ridiculous and thinking about science fiction, but in Star Trek, we talk to the computer, right?
Yeah.
And I always have flashbacks when Scotty had to go back in time and they're like trying to talk to the computer and it didn't understand. Had to use a keyboard instead. And so I think in a little way, Waylay is trying to push society, trying to push where we all are in that direction. Because someone's got to be a pioneer, and someone's going to have all the arrows stuck in their back, but you've got to really start and put this technology out there so that one day in the future, we may not be around. Every system is just, of course, you just talk to it, and the AI technology is just getting better and better as it gets trained with bigger data sets and with zillions of parameters, and we're absolutely going to get there. And so I'm
I would
getting kicked out of
Rob was I was going to jump off from where you were, Rob, and the point you were making in terms of things are getting better, but it's going to get better as things open up to people solving new sets of problems. And when we have a set of tools like this that give you the opportunity to approach any problem and people can use them, hack with them as they need, that brings new disciplines to bear. If we think only in terms of what could be an Alexa skill, that's great, as long as you only care about things that make sense for Amazon to approve as Alexa skills. But if we think about all of the things that we can do, the thing that makes me especially, every time I think about a technology, I think about the invention of email. And I can't remember who it was that turned to somebody and said, don't tell anybody I'm working on this. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And it was the invention of email on the internet in the 70s. We have to have technologies that people can hack on to solve these problems. And NLP is in that space where it is still undefined what we're going to do with it. But this constructor kit that can solve both trivial problems and really, really complex problems, I think is very helpful in that.
Yeah, and to some extent, what we do with NLP Hackathon is that we don't really know how it's going to work. And one of the things of having arrows in your back maybe just doesn't work. But that's the beauty of it. You don't know till you try it, really. So we really try to push ourselves hard, and hopefully people who will be trying these things. And there are a lot of problems, not really only related to technology. It's also in context you're saying things. Coming back to your Star Trek thing, or like make me a coffee problem. It's actually a big problem, because if I were to make coffee in your home, I know where your kitchen is. I probably know where the coffee machine is. But if you tell a robot make me coffee, he has no clue where to start from. I mean, you have to bring that context and environment in which you actually you have that not only language understanding, but it's context in which you're saying things, you're expecting things to happen. And this is also something that you see. I mean, also in Alexa, it was very rudimentary, very useful, because it was a very simple thing. There was a question, there is an answer. Once you start building on constructions that you say, well, this guy doesn't understand anything. It's actually the context in which you're asking things. It's a pretty hard problem to solve. And you will see through this hackathon how people, hopefully they will figure out, but there will be some struggle to contextualize the message or information. They would like something else to automate,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure there's another question, but I think what Veslin's getting at there is the previous construct was there was a menu of things you could do, and that was the context. You could respond within that context of what those things were. And what NLP requires is inverting that, and that the user knows what they want. NLP has to figure that out without having that context. And so that inversion of the menu is really one of the most exciting things.
Exactly. I was going to say a little bit the same thing. At the moment, you have like two different spectra. You have these Alexa skills that are very defined, and on the other hand, you have code for nerds, which lives in NLP notebooks, Python notebooks, which are very versatile, but absolutely not user-friendly. So are we looking at a time where this creating new things that NLP can do is configurable by low code? Or is there another solution to this?
Most probably there are multiple solutions that we are currently not aware of, and maybe we cannot even imagine today. So
Only.
not going in that direction. For instance, what we are kind of very good as a species is pattern matching. And this is where, for instance, Waylay is perfect because it enables you with a very nice kind of visual UI to define processing pipelines. And then where NLP fits in is like processing inputs and making sense out of it. And then based on the business logic that you construct in this nice UI, you can either react or not. And I think that's the essence of combining these two. Having a possibility to define semi-complicated business logic in an easy way for not technical persons and enable them to grasp the context from either voice or text input. And I deliberately insist on separating these two because both of them are important in different contexts. And one will
How so?
versus the other, but I think that will be one of the next debating topics.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you want to separate them, the text and the spoken language. Is there a certain reason for that, or?
Yes. For some context, the text is already there and it's kind of predominantly used. Like I mentioned, these legal documents, nobody wants to read them out loud. Even the lawyers don't want to read them. But for instance, if you consider, let's say, something that is close to Glovo, like this last mile delivery, you have a courier or somebody who is preparing a package and he has both hands engaged and he cannot do any other input beside the voice. There are a lot of these kind of businesses, especially in manufacture, education, medicine, a lot of things where we don't want to engage in using hands for other things, and we can use our most powerful weapon, which is the voice. At least by Dina, this is like the most powerful one. So somehow I like to somehow separate them because we mentioned too many times Alexa here. Yes, it's a good example, but we should not be like engaged too much in that perspective. There is a much bigger world out there that actually have possibilities and needs for these tools.
Yeah, your Siri is being left out of this conversation, and so is poor Cortana.
Yes.
I just from my stuff, I reached out to a friend of mine who is into the also NLP stuff, and I asked him, so do you see that already application industry? I mean, then to your point, there is already like in the blue collar works, I mean, in Amazon workers, their hands are busy, they need to ask questions, and these things already exist. The problem there is to really define the dictionary pronunciation that people know, okay, show me where is this and that. And basically kind of a Q&A sort of a thing, like, okay, tell me where I need to go from here and so forth. So these things are existing, and these things are indeed something that is already applicable. And it's necessarily, when we talk about NLP and automation, everybody hooks into the smart home because it is very close to us, like at home automation, but there is already application industry which is already there. Yeah, totally agree with you.
I don't know. I want to make a case for the supposedly trivial uses of this. And Dejan, when you were talking about the separation of text versus speech and those inputs, I think we need to be doing more things like the very, very classic games from the 70s and early 80s of those text games like Zork and other of those early games. I remember. Do we remember the old movie War Games where a kid quote hacks into one of these old computers? But I think the part I'm getting at here is that we had this wonderful. The way people experienced computers was through some of this wonderful creative stuff, and I think there's a real opportunity for us to explore how this works if we think of it as a literature. Of course, the word literature focuses on words, but if we think about it as literature that you can experience and participate in, and in the way that those old games work, I think there's a real opportunity for us to invent some new and develop some new understanding of how this works and how we can integrate it with our lives.
Casey, I will even extend that to even more important thing, and that's education. So using these kind of tools that are interactive, especially with educating kids in a day that we, who is predominantly educated for working in factories, has to move to educate our kids to work in more creative environments using tools that were not in our time presence. It's extremely important to somehow find these engaging creative ways for them to be interested in learning. And I think we all as a parents are struggling with that already. So not just literature, not just game and entertainment. I'm more interested even to go in this kind of interactive learning, which understanding the context, be able to react in near real-time fashion, applying this kind of predefined business logic and be creative to adjust it on fly is maybe the key elements that we have technology today. But we need this kind of human workforce to engage. And at least I'm not expert in interactive learning. So I need these teachers and creative thinkers to be engaged with such technology, maybe using the similar tools like Waylay has adjusted to these needs and give them the power to create.
You know, you're touching to some interesting subject. I mean, I'm going really now. Sandra, you need to stop me if I go really way far now.
I have the feeling the other panel members will also stop you if they want to.
It's really about the creativity. What I really find studied that not so many girls are in engineering because they don't see that creativity part that we, as if you like, males see that in coding. But you know, as a coder, 90% of stuff you do is just super boring. I mean, it's not really about creativity, just working almost against the architecture and technology before you get to the cool stuff. So, and again, it's all about lowering the bar and really using technology to the full power and really using that creativity, which is somehow missing because instead of having your laptop, your keyboard to help you out, you often fight with all sorts of crazy error codes and builds and webpacks, you name it, you know it. So, I mean, this is also that kind of interaction and using technologies as a voice or other inputs that really are working always for you rather than against you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you also touched upon something very interesting because at the moment, if you think about NLP, we often think about, let's say, Alexa, if we haven't mentioned them before. You say, hey, Alexa, do this, and then Alexa does that. But often there is a lot more interaction needed, and I think chatbots, the thing you, John, are working on, did crack that already. So do you think that there will be more interactive use cases like this, or is it going to stay rigid?
No. This early kind of generation of chatbots that are mostly applied to well predefined context, like banks or mobile operators, that you don't have actually more than 7 different paths of what you can ask in a bank, for instance. But it's what's early stage, and more you have more elaborate chatbots that actually can not just understand the context, but also understand the sentiment and react on both of these inputs. As we get more and more kind of sensors around us, the context will be much elaborate, and the reaction of these systems will be more precise. So I see this as a way to go. Again, I want to somehow emphasize these low-code kind of tools that enables people from other branches of the industry to interact with the gadgets that we like is a key to success.
Yeah, I would agree that chatbots are, I mean, you have kind of a decision trees, you kind of rebuild things and you just kind of navigate things. Or you have another extreme that we tried and we see failures there where you let chatbots almost like a dream things and becomes a pretty tricky conversation after a while. So, and what we tried, and hopefully some of people will hack that, is basically you can integrate like for the Slack bot or whatever chatbot, your problem, but it's kind of it's been structured in a way that you understand the context in which things have been asked, and in one question, you get all these decision trees figured out, and then you get the right answer. So this, I think, a pretty cool stuff, rather than being constantly asking questions, yes or no, yes or no, yes or no, or having something which is kind of super vague. To have within one question understand the context and get the good answer on your question, which is pretty cool.
Do you
free?
I was going to ask if, I mean, that those generational advancements that allow us to take that context between, like, it was a narrow menu and narrow options to now have all that context. What are the? Forgive me, now I'm asking questions. But like,
Go ahead.
how do we see that playing out? Where do we see that going with the next? What's the big sign that we've achieved that? You offered Make Me Coffee earlier, which sort of highlights some of those things.
Well, I think that, I mean, it's very hard not to talk about AI in particular. I mean, general AI, it's unavoidable. 50 years ago or 40 years ago, people thought that easy problem will be to tell a robot to make a coffee. People thought that the hard problem will be to do the weather forecasting, because it was very mathematical. It turned out it's the other way around. You can have more and more precision weather forecast, but you still cannot tell a robot to make a coffee and figure it out in your kitchen how to do that. Now, what the other thing that strike me with the GPT-3, and this is something that why we are feel comfortable doing this hackathon, is that there is something called the prompt engineering, which basically means you have some sort of the NLP brain, but you can kind of train it and navigate in the way you would like it to understand your input argument, so to speak. So basically, you will see through the hackathon, people will be able to train in particular context how would they would like this sentence to look like, because nobody says the same thing twice in the same way. I mean, you usually have a sentences that can be all, in all directions. So I'm not a linguist, but you can just say, hey, Casey, do you mind to make me a coffee? Or please, how about making me a coffee? And what you actually want to say, make me a coffee. I mean, this is what the prompt engineering is about. It's kind of narrowing the scope from where you can actually start doing automation, because you work with one input, which is, hey, make me a coffee. And the way you're actually telling this sentence, it's kind of getting streamlined through the prompt engineering. So that's already then exciting, because from then onwards, you can actually say, okay, do I know how to make a coffee? Then you start asking the right questions. Where is the kitchen? So this is really where the prompt engineering in NLP tries to solve the problem of the understanding of what you actually want to achieve, which is pretty cool. This stuff has not existed 2-3 years ago. And that's actually what made me so exciting and actually giving a go for this NLP hackathon. But obviously there is a bigger scope of problems, is that how far you can stretch this stuff and actually learn the new context. This is going in all other directions. Which is, I mean, someone needs to fix that at one moment. But we are not so close to that, to be honest. Star Trek is still a Star Trek.
I feel like I'm on Star Trek. I keep getting beamed to some other planet and then back again. So, sorry.
You're the lucky ones.
That's right.
Yeah.
5 to beam up. Yeah. Oh, man.
Exactly. Oh.
Yeah. So here is again teleporting. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Sandra, do you have some other questions for us? I mean, we can It's very entertaining but I think you had some other stuff that you want to chat with us about the
Yes, for
observability
sure.
or yeah.
So at the moment, we have mostly discussed like how NLP would be used by non-technical users. There's of course also the other side, for example, the more technical users like coders, where GitHub tried their autocomplete NLP project where they would autocomplete your code. Do you think that there's also space for that in the NLP place in the world, or is it mostly going to be for real end users who are not that technical?
Well, I think more and more we are not technical. Even us in engineering, we are more and more moving toward high level kind of tools and languages and all kind of stuff. I just played with Kubernetes the other day. Am I infrastructure engineer? Of course not. Can I spawn some kind of serverless infrastructure in no time? Yes, I can. Will NLP help me in that process? Of course. And if you think about it, and I will give you a silly example, writing a small software is, on a technical level, it's about for loops, if blocks, and some kind of assignments. Can I dictate that using my voice? Yes. The problematic part, and we are still far away from it, even with the modern NLP and IE, is how to figure out the solution. The whole IE today is about prior experiences and prediction based on history events. Creativity is still not there yet. So yes, it will be on vertical and lateral approach.
I know it's a huge difference, but the thing I have to think of here is that very experienced pilots use autopilot, and they operate the aircraft with hundreds of people on board using autopilot because that's the safest, best way for them to do it, so that they can focus on the things that are not easily done by the computers, even though the computer can land the aircraft and things like that. But using autopilot helps. In some ways, that maybe lowers, the skill barriers, and we've definitely seen cases where there are people who become too dependent on autopilot and are not, and other systems, and are not bringing the skill necessary to the job. And those have, we've looked at and we can see those and built improvement programs around that. And I think that's going to apply in a lot of places as we look at where everything that requires skill, there's some aspect of it that is repeatable, learnable. And we have to be really good at that pattern recognition for when something is not the right way. That's going to be very, very difficult. And I think we're going to see a lot more. I sort of pointed towards aircraft disasters a moment ago, and I feel really bad about that. But I think we have to, as we look at how we use these technologies, we're going to see some surprising cases. But overall, there's good reason for us to be looking at it because we can create better products by automating the boring parts.
Definitely. I see, Rob, we have you here for a moment. Maybe
I'm here for a moment, maybe for 5 or 6 seconds here. Yeah. You know what? Like anything in life, whether it's autocomplete with NLP, it's all going to happen. It's just a matter of time and compute resources and research. We may not want it to happen. I don't know if I want an AI writing my code for me, but it's going to happen eventually, no doubt about it. It's just progress, it's just the way it is. It's interesting to me, those low code, no code things been around for many decades, whether people realize it or not. And you see two pathways all at the same time. While you see, especially a lot of hype around, I had to beam out for a second there. Anyway, maybe you can hear me. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of hype around low code and no code platforms today. Concurrently, you still see developers using just all the normal programming languages. It's not like the one's not replacing the other. because there's a lot of hype saying, oh, we're going to quit using Go and Java and C# and Python, and you're not going to do it anymore. And that's not happening at all, actually. It's almost like all boats are being lifted. It'll be interesting to see how all this plays out. But from if developers or people who are trying to build these automated solutions can do it more quickly, that's great. If the customer in a factory or wherever can create automation, I spent last summer on a farm doing IoT in agriculture, and it's like I love to say, hey, when the soil moisture is below this percentage, activate the automated irrigation system for this block and this acre of apple orchards, and then as soon as it gets down to this threshold, turn it off. Just simple threshold-based stuff. I think that'd be great, and I think it'd be great for customers.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great example of how NLP would make the life of farmers way, way easier.
Absolutely. Maybe NLP can fix my browser.
Yeah.
Maybe you could
Fix internet. Yeah.
You should ask nicely.
I do. I mean, I think that's a really great example. Not the browser thing, but agriculture. I mean, the skills required and the science involved in optimizing agriculture, and you have to do that for a variety of outcomes. I mean, you can optimize for production, but can you optimize for production with less fertilizer, and less CO2 emissions, and so getting to those things and being able to guide that is a really exciting use case. So interesting stuff.
Absolutely. You talk to these farmers, these growers, they go, I don't know how any of this technology works. I don't understand the devices, the sensors. I just need the stuff to work, and I got to be it easy. It's got to be simple. And if I can talk to it, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I find amazing is that technology lowers the bar, makes us lazy, but it also makes other things much more complicated. I mean, I remember when we invented, some other people, washing machine, we thought don't need to do these things. We can just go on beach and read books. But eventually we start getting busy with other things. So the same is going to happen here. We're going to be having free hands, but we're going to be busy with the voice to do other things. So it's kind of interesting that we make ourselves more busy by making technology more approachable, because there will be other things to solve. So it's the same happening in software engineering, because you can say a sentence, make me a Fibonacci, so you don't have to code for 1 hour. What are you going to do that hour? Make a coffee? Drink it? No, you're going to be doing other things which are more complicated. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see that how, as we lower the bar on one hand, we are increasing, I would say, even our own complexity. It is going to be interesting to see that impact on many industries. How on one hand we're going to make some things lazy, I'll say lousy, but on the other hand we're going to increase complexity. I really wonder when you talk about Star Trek how people fix these things. I mean, you just say things and things happen. I mean, who knows to put a screwdriver, poor guy, and actually fix things. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting how, like you said, Rob, things are like people are coding and people are using low code in parallel. So it's going to be interesting to see these things.
Insert more dilithium crystals into the engine.
Yes, exactly.
Insert sound clip of Scotty saying that there's as many dilithium crystals as possible in there, with an accent that I'm not going to attempt.
For me, what is interesting about the NLP, what also exciting me in terms of automation, maybe just kind of switch to other problems that I find interesting, is that there is this sort of automation that is also related to explainability. We talk about NLP or deep learning, which is like a magic black box. You don't want a machine to do something, and has this machine actually understood what I meant by saying these things? It would be really cool that machine tells you, I'm doing these things because you told me to do that and that and that in its own words, to explain you back what your intent was. So I think it's also like coming back to Star Trek, you're telling, or a Siri rather, do something. Has that machine understood what you really meant by this command or chain of commands? And this is really going to be also interesting context of NLP automation, how we trust things that we say that is actually going to happen.
But
Coming back to Alexa, it was easy to a large extent because you had a sorry there. I'm going to go back to Alexa. This is promised last time. You ask the question, you get a response, and you know already whether Alexa got your question. But
I
once you
think
start building other complexities, you know how you actually understand whether that machine is really got what you wanted it to do.
so. So let me just add to your kind of saying here. What I think it will happen. It will happen the same thing that happens in people management. As most of us has experience on our skin, the topic was micromanaging. And it's less and less topic today because we managed to learn the other people to don't micromanage us, but to give us some kind of goals they want to achieve. And we are smart enough and creative enough that we can achieve these goals as they required. The same will go with this kind of automation. These machines, in order to scale and be clever, will be more and more autonomous, and we will ask them these kind of high-level goals of achievement. They will do all the stuff by themselves. So it will be less of us telling all the steps like we currently do with all the chatbots or this kind of automation using our voice or text currently. It will be more high-level interactions. And yes, we will require some feedback, most probably nice one, that they understood our meaning.
Indeed.
And I want to add something that you previously said. Automation is it can be related to bureaucracy. And even the bureaucracy is treated as a wrong thing or something not pleasant, is one of the biggest achievements of human race because it actually presents a collection of rules. And bureaucracy generates even more bureaucracy. And all of us learn that if you want to change something, you actually add more rules. So we are going in that direction, and these kind of tools that create rules like in Waylay, easy with nice UI, and connect them with these inputs that can easily be comprehend, will make us more productive, and then we can focus on something else. Other tasks to complete.
I wanted to jump in on that one because what is interesting is who does the technology serve is a question that we have to think about. And when technology is something that requires huge training and capital investment, inevitably it serves. And now I sound very of a certain mind. But when technology is something that everybody can build to apply to their jobs and the problems that are close to them, when that's how they can address it, technology is empowering to people to do new and different things. But when it is one of those things where it requires a huge investment, it's going to solve a different set of problems, and it's going to solve them in a different way. But again, when it is that sort of thing that the individual can use and apply to the tasks in front of them, it solves a more interesting and different set. And so when you talk about bureaucracy and the adding of rules, it's an interesting set of circumstances, and we may see the technology empowering the individual more than the bureaucracy.
As I said, we presume bureaucracy is something that is kind of wrong to the freedom of people. It's actually not, but that's presumption. So.
It all depends, I guess.
I have no comment about bureaucracy.
No.
What a way to go!
And then he's gone.
No. I mean, let me depoliticize that. I mean, what's really interesting and what I love about low code, no code really is how it's serving people to solve those smaller problems. problems. By lowering the cost of innovation, you do get a different set of problems and a more interesting set of problems. And that's worth noticing. It serves all sorts of purposes and all sorts of needs, but it drives innovation in a way that we really have to take note of.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I think you
And
can
I
also
think-
have a look at. Oh, sorry, Dejan,
No,
go
no,
ahead.
no, no. I just want to add to cases that if you think that currently the part of the barrier is that people has either to type something that is more cryptic or to drag and drop from very versatile menus, be able to just express themselves in a natural way using their own voice and language will even more lower the bar.
Exactly.
All
Okay,
right, let's lower that
I'm
bar.
watching my clock. I am guy who typically in a meeting is like watching the clock. So not sure how you guys are with the time. So, Sander, what?
Yeah, sorry. Normally this session is only 15 minutes more longer, I think.
Okay, cool.
So maybe we could do one last question. I see that there were no questions from the audience, but I have one last question, and then we'll do like some closing statements from everyone, and then we'll wrap up if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. So my last question was more of a security standpoint question, because we've seen, for example, GitHub, who released this functionality to autocomplete your code, but then there were a whole bunch of keys and secrets that got leaked because of that. Is that also a concern that we should have around the more low-level users? For example, that secrets get leaked between members of the same family or between people within the same company, or between companies.
That's a great point. You know, does anybody remember when Microsoft put this bot out on Twitter called Tay? And she was this AI, and she just started absorbing the whole internet. And within like 48 hours, they had to shut her down because I didn't want to talk about what she was saying. Anyway, that's you have to have guardrails on it. And just like in a system today, you have to log in, you've got your credentials, you've got role-based access control as someone who's an administrator of your system, for instance, to do rules, to make things happen. And so likewise with voice, you can't just have anybody's voice just start talking to the system and having it do what normally you would log in and type in. So there has to be some kind of authentication to know it's you that's talking, either a voice print, or maybe you've got to type in credentials before the NLP system will start listening to you and go, okay, you're authorized to give me commands to create models to whatever. So yeah, I like lots of things, there's always lots of risk. And so definitely have to work to mitigate that in advance.
Yeah, I think, Rob, I think one interesting thing is that whenever there is a technology, there will be some people who will try to game technology for fun or for other reasons. So I think there are two aspects of that. I was even thinking myself, for instance, GitHub, it's crowdsourcing all code that we have. So imagine someone just writing wrong Fibonacci code. And just 10,000 people just for fun do that. And suddenly, your Fibonacci code is not good enough because you're just kind of crowdsourcing a knowledge that it's kind of biased already. That's one problem with these things. And the second one is that I remember laughing. I read one guy, a biker, who put a T-shirt with a stop sign to make sure the Tesla is stopping before he's riding the bike in another place. Again, the guy just realized, okay, why not? Just why not to try this? We have like T-shirts like a 30 or 40. People try to game the system. And the same thing will happen with this sort of technology. That's also why it's kind of tricky. You have this like a movie, I, Robot or something, where you start thinking, okay, is this thing actually really doing what it's supposed to do? And secondly, someone is trying to game the system. And then you have to have some sort of the audit and security embedded. Otherwise, things will really go loose. So it's again, as we are building technology, you always have to think that there will be people for fun or not fun trying to abuse and do some other things with this thing. So it's a slippery slope if you just bring it. On one hand, you want people to play and try with these things. But obviously, there'll be people who will be interested in gaming the system and abusing it for all sorts of reasons.
I want to take what you just said, and I remember reports of tests on those automated autopilot driving systems that were just showing a speed limit and flashing that on the side of a building, a projection of a speed limit sign. And for too short a period to register as a human for human vision, but it would register in the cameras, and the vehicles would think that the speed limit is 60 or whatever, and it is, yeah. And so there are it is a very interesting problem space, as you describe, and it's not just how it works, but how it fails that we have to pay attention to. That's especially interesting.
I like to think about it's just a learning opportunity. Yeah. It will never go away. It's a cat and mouse game. It's like catch up with more creative people with different intentions, and we have to learn as we go. This is how the whole humanity evolved so far, and I don't see that the trajectory will be different. So we should embrace it, be aware that it can happen, build the best protecting system that we can, and be surprised all the time.
For sure.
I think what you say is exactly on point. We solve these problems when it is individual hackers who can play with the technology and make sense of it and develop things. That's a different thing than if it is a very large company that's promoting a certain thing, and the individual hacker and enabling those individual hackers to understand and ask the questions and see how things can work is really, really critical to building that kind of understanding that helps us shape good questions to ask of everything that we're building, at the same time as it helps us invent those new things that nobody imagined.
For me, what is interesting is then, speaking about the autopilots, I think it was somewhere in Germany and Europe, I believe, that there was a discussion, in case there is an accident, who is responsible, driver or the company who has deployed the system? And turned out it has to be a company. So what I want to say, as you start doing an automation in this context, obviously for hacking things at home, it's kind of okay, but once you start deploying this technology, don't get me wrong, then I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think it's still the NLP and AI, it's a kind of a different thing because you can deliberately or not just delegate responsibility to something. And this is, I think, pretty unique in history that, I mean, we were always talking about casual things, like I do these things and this happens. And you understood the roles, understood the responsibilities. When you start delegating to something which is not human, and if something goes wrong, you really start asking yourself a question related to like a black box AI or no, who is then in charge of making sure that it's ethical and so forth and so forth. So I think it's going to be tricky to see that. I'm not saying that I know the answer, but I'm just saying that it's very first time, I think, in mankind that we are going to be having this sort of troubles of understanding how far we want to go, how far we want to delegate these things. Remember Odyssey 2001, Hal started doing his own thing. Okay, so that's going to probably happen if we are not careful.
One of the hackathon people is going to have Waylay open the pod bay doors, I think.
I will be watching out our Kubernetes.
For sure. Okay, maybe I think we had a nice discussion. We're maybe almost ending on a very sinister note, but let's do a last round of final thoughts, and then let's wrap up for today. So, Dejan, the floor is yours.
Okay, so what I think and what I'm really looking forward is to see more and more combining these two domains of low code and NLP, combining with other things like actuator sensors and in domains that we haven't seen so far. And as I said, for me, democratization of IT and this source that makes people more creative to facilitate their needs is the best thing that happens to us, with all these problems that are following as well. So great time ahead of us.
For sure. Interesting times. Casey?
You know, I didn't realize I would come out so strongly in terms of democratization, following a little bit of what Dejan said a moment ago. But really, truly, what excites me about this, and I want to repeat it, is this opportunity, these tools, the democratization of these tools and accessibility of these tools to do really interesting and powerful things for any purpose. And I've seen, I know Waylay has showed some really powerful business solutions that are solved this hackathon. I look forward to how people do things silly and huge, you know, and significant, but both the silly and the significant, both bringing this together, showing how the access to technologies that and the democratization of technologies that anybody can use to interpret and understand human language, to build some really interesting and powerful things. There's a huge opportunity ahead for that, as we've said around the room here, and both like great power, but also this great opportunity for people to see where it can go wrong and be able to ask better questions and even demonstrate. I mean, one of the greatest things that we might see here is to demonstrate a hack, a vulnerability kind of hack, you know, something that we do not want to happen. That I think would be equal in the excitement here. So looking forward to everything that the folks here are going to build, and really eager to see the results in a few days.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Dejan and Casey are saying. The democratization, using the GPT-3, using these new technologies that are open for everyone. It's not some proprietary thing coming from some big company that locks you in. I think it's great stuff. It lets everybody be creative. And you're right. So many times we'll put some kind of generic technology out there, and we think we know what's coming, but we really don't. And that's part of the fun. I want to be surprised by these hackers and see what they come up with. I do like the idea. Hey, let's find vulnerabilities. Let's do all this stuff. Let's harden the system. And I have to say, I love Casey's microphone. He sounds incredible. Thanks
Thank
so
you
much for having me.
Compliments all around. Indeed. All right, Fazlin, you any last thoughts?
No, first I would just like to thank everybody for being here today, and I'm really excited. And I would like also to ask participants to be gentle to us. I'm not sure it's gonna crash all over the place, but we have mentors to make sure that you get the right support. This is all new to all of us. Nobody knows what's gonna come out of that, but it's part of the game and fun. And we are not shy, neither we are. We are bold in trying new things. This is also what keeps us, happy in our own engineering life. And again, what comes out of that, it's going to be for generations to come and enjoy. And someone needs to be the first one and just have fun with that one. And so I would like, again, thanks to everybody who is going to participate, you guys, and, let's see what comes out of this thing,
Okay, awesome.
So
With that, we'll wrap up our discussion. I want to thank all my panel members. I want to thank the audience for being here. Don't forget to message me on Slack if you want who's in your group, and I'll send you a mentor who will be guiding you through the hackathon. And that's it. All right.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
everyone.
See you.
Thank you. So great to be here.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.